Um, so good morning again. There's a chance that we might get a couple of more folks coming in, but I'll just take a minute and I'll introduce myself and I'll frame what we're going to do today. My name is Lisa Jasinski, and I'm the Special Assistant to the Vice President for Academic Affairs, and I'm the Academic Affairs Lead on the product Digital Measures and Workflow. I know that for many of you, this is going to be a little bit of a refresher. The School of Business is now in its second cycle of using digital measures. This is really sort of a refresher for today. And that for those of you who might be using it for the first time, this is also going to serve as a kind of top to bottom training. I really encourage you to make this session as interactive as possible. So at a few different points, we will pause and I'll let you play with the system so that you can really kind of get a sense of how it's working. The last thing I'll say is I don't know what's going on with my screen today, but I can't see you. I can't see your thumbnails. So Jess, if you can see people, if you can just sort of step in if you see somebody like saying I have a question, that would be really helpful. Or if you want to just put in the chat that you have a question, I'll make sure to stop. It's very it's weird not to have any feedback, so I'll look for that periodically. I'm joined today by my very capable colleague, Jess Bardo in ITS. Many of you have got to know Jess very well in the last year, in particular for the really excellent training and support that she's provided around Zoom. But she's been a great partner in this work and we really try to approach it together. So for those of you following along, I'm on slide 3. And I wanted to say a little bit about digital measures before we get into the training. This year is our second year of the pilot. We've made some, I think, helpful changes based on faculty feedback, but we're still continuing to learn. So this year we're bringing in 4 additional departments: computer science, healthcare administration, engineering science, and the library. So that brings us to a total of, let's see, math on the fly, I think about 9 departments that are using the program. One thing I'll say is that only these departments are using digital measures, and only full-time faculty who complete a SPA enter their work into digital measures. This is a little bit different in the School of Business, but I just want to say if you talk to a colleague who doesn't fall into one of these categories, there's a good chance that they're going to look at you in a kind of very puzzled way. And just so nobody gets confused, I just want to be really transparent about who's using the program and who's not. So really by the end of today, I have a few kind of modest goals. I hope that you'll understand why we're continuing to pilot this tool. You'll feel really confident about the information that you need to put into the digital measures system, and that you'll feel really confident to be able to go into the system and enter your data and complete your annual review materials. I will remind you that that deadline is coming up on January 20th. So I think it's just about a little over a week away. So there's still some great opportunities to get help if you need some more help after today, but I'm very cognizant that that deadline is right around the corner. So as just a reminder, what Digital Measures is, it's an online faculty database that is maintained by Trinity. And the motto that the company likes to use is that enter your data once and it lives forever. So the idea is that instead of having to kind of turn around and keep asking faculty for very similar information, whether it's for annual review, Aacsb accreditation, Impact Magazine, the idea is that this database is sort of robust and nimble enough that we can keep pulling the data that we need, and that hopefully we can sort of take the time commitment down for faculty. So for those of you that are in digital measures, and now is a good point for me to pause and just sort of ask you in the chat, Has anybody not been able to get into digital measures?
I don't remember my password and I'm trying to reset it or something. So nope, I can't get in. But
Okay. Keep in mind that right over the break, we had, there was like a mass, Jess, help me out. Like, did they change everybody's network password around Christmas?
Yeah, so right at Thanksgiving, everyone's network password was asked to be reset. If you are having trouble with that, I can send you to the password page. And if you're not able to change it that way, then we can get you in touch with help desk. So I'll send that over.
Thanks, Jess.
I'm having the same problem. I do know my network password and it's not working for digital measures. Should we be using our previous network password for this?
Have you been on campus since you
I have
changed?
not been on campus.
Okay, so then yes, use your old one. Try
Okay.
your old one, I guess I should say.
so Jess, you're going to send us, this is Amy. I need a new link to reset mine.
Okay, I just sent it in the chat for you. And then if by chance, some folks aren't enrolled. So if you're not enrolled, that's okay. We just have to give a quick call over to the help desk and they can change it for you.
So I would say if you're with me and you're able to follow along, fantastic. If not, if you're able to even just like mute your mic and call the help desk, that's definitely an option. If not, I think today will be fine to follow along, and you can always go back and rewatch any sections if you need to attend to your password needs. But I gave this spiel last year, and I think it sort of helped bring some anxiety down. So I'm going to try to get the same effect this year. There's a lot of possible screens in digital measures. So many of you should see this. Each one of these titles in maroon is a link to a different kind of record in digital measures. The thing is, only some of these will apply to you in any given year, right? So I don't know if anybody in the School of Business gave a concert last year, but 10 to 1, you don't have as many concert entries. There's a new screen that you'll see, it says librarianship. Again, that's sort of probably something that most folks in the School of Business aren't going to have. So as you look at this screen, know that if there's something here that doesn't apply to you, you don't have to enter any data. The second is that today we're really talking about getting ready for your 2020 faculty evaluation. So really think about entering data for the last calendar year. I know that for accreditation purposes, the School of Business might want to kind of make those records more robust. But as you think about that January 20th deadline, you really only have to enter information from the last year. And the last thing is that we have tried to enter some data on your behalf. So there's a little bit less data entry on your part. So for example, we've already tried to tell the system anything we knew about you, what you taught, your advising load, and then if you had any publications that were in the digital commons, we've already put that information in the system. So hopefully that'll just kind of reduce the amount of data entry that that each individual has to do. So now I think is usually a good time to kind of pause and let you try to actually put an entry in the system. So for those of you that are coming back for a second year, this is really just a recap. But I wonder if I could actually get a volunteer who's willing to enter something in sort of into the system. You can share your screen if you have either a form of service that you completed last year, a presentation, a new publication, or an award. I'm gonna stop sharing just for a second.
Is it, sorry, this is Teresa.
Yeah,
Is it normal that pretty much none of mine are filled in?
sure. Totally normal. So the thing is, Teresa, we keep very few central records of faculty activity. So we don't know when you go off and like do professional service. So do you see anything under scheduled teaching?
No,
Are you a part-time faculty member?
no,
And you taught in the fall?
yes.
Okay, so we should talk offline. Okay, is anybody else like seeing nothing? I'm guessing for most people, they're gonna see, so some of the administrative assistants, I'm guessing your screens are basically blank. You're here with kind of proxy access. Yeah, Teresa, let's talk right after the training.
Okay, thank you.
So
Lisa,
yeah, yes, Bob.
yeah, quick question for you. In the teaching section, there's a number of items that say hidden from the instructor.
Okay, so
And that,
Mhm.
go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead. Yep.
Those are items, I don't know that that's the best way to characterize it, hidden, but those are items that are filled in already.
Okay, so there's two kind of bits of insider lingo that digital measures use. One is called hidden and one is called locked. So I think the fields that are hidden, digital measures has the ability to track the number of students in a course that got A's, B's, C's, D's, and F's. Like, we don't use that lingo at Trinity. That's never been a metric that we used. So that's hidden because we don't put any data in there. It's just like not part of our database. Like, we bought a product and we just said, turn that off because we don't use it. So when it's hidden, it just means like we're not using that field because it's not something that that Trinity uses.
So well, I'll be happy to share my screen.
Okay, let me give you the ability to do that. Okay, Bob, you should have the ability to do that now.
So there's mine.
Great,
And I've actually gone in and done most of it, but just for
fantastic.
demonstration purposes, let me
Scheduled
just,
teaching. Yeah, it's to the right.
Yeah, let me go to scheduled teaching. So it's got my spring 2020
Mhm.
course in there. These are the little fields that I was talking about. This
Okay.
field is read only. And then these H's apparently are hidden to faculty. So it doesn't look like that data shows up when you create the SPA, but are the, it says mean course evaluation score. Are you guys collecting that, or do we need to
No.
enter that data with the teaching evaluations, or?
So Bob, I think your screen shows a little bit more because you have slightly higher administrative privileges. So
okay.
I'm just going to tell you all, Trinity's data system is not nearly sophisticated enough to pull like a mean faculty evaluation score. So like
Gotcha.
we never put anything in that screen. And if you are in scheduled teaching, you'll see that certain fields are locked, like the number of students in a course. And the reason is we pull that information right out of the colleague system. And we don't want to come up with a situation in which the colleague data doesn't match your digital measures data. So if colleague said you had 20 students in class and you said you had 56, we should try to come up with an official number. So that's a little bit inside baseball. I'm not even sure. Does anybody else even see those screens? Those like A, B, D?
Yeah, you may be right. It may just be
Yeah.
my access,
Great.
but I'll be happy to I'll go to publications.
Great.
And add a new.
Great.
I'm just going to make one up.
Perfect. That's great.
How's
And then
that
you-
sound?
That sounds perfect.
So I just go over here to publications and I'm going to click up here in the right-hand corner, add new item. And I'm going to put, well, we'll say I'm we'll just say I've already had it accepted. And I'll put February 1, 2020 is the month accepted. And the date published, we'll just call it March 1, 2020. And then I'll go down here to this drop down for contribution type. I'm going to put journal article, current status. I'm going to put published because it's already, see the date published up there. And the journal name, I'll put Journal of Business Studies. And I usually leave in, for my purposes, this is to me optional, the publisher. But if you wanted to put that in, you could put Emerald. To me, as Lisa was saying earlier, some of this, it's just, I don't think it's relevant for what we need for accreditation purposes or for what you need to enter for your SPA to be completed. Country, the volume. So you do want to put the citation, volume 36, issue number 1, page numbers 27 to 41. How many pages is that, accounting folks? Or statistics folks? We'll call it 15 pages. I'm not doing it in, was it peer reviewed? Yes. So editorial reviewed, not necessary if you've entered peer reviewed. What's this for a School of Business? You can put what it is. We'll call it basic or discovery.
I have a slide that has the definitions for all of those terms, so I'll remind those to you in just a second.
Wonderful. Yeah. And then my co-author was Lisa.
Oh, you have to put that somewhere else, Bob. That's for your institution. So I think you put like Trinity right there if you want.
Okay. Oh, right here?
Yep.
Oh, institution. I'm sorry. I know what I did wrong. Okay, got to get back in the swing here. And then I want to add a row below, and I'm going to put people at Trinity. And then Lisa Jasinski comes up, and she's one of my co-authors. And then you can put your DOI number in. Whatever. A lot of this doesn't apply to us, PubMed. You can, if you want, cut and paste your abstract in here, but I haven't done that because you can then right here go to, let me go right here and we'll go to this, hang on, let me find one. You could take your manuscript and just put it right there. That's a draft of a manuscript from 2016, but usually you could put a PDF file there or whatever you'd like. So then it's your manuscript is attached. And if it's open access, it says you can put it as a Word document. So,
Bob, I have a question. This is Mal.
yes, Mel. Yes, Mel.
Yes, can you go back to current status? Can you take a look at the drop down current status, please?
Current status, okay. Where do you see that? Oh, right there.
We put publish.
There you go. I put published.
Right. Can you just click over there to take a look at the drop down? Okay. There is working paper there. So my question is, if you have a paper that you did, your tables, the empirical, and you're writing the paper, is that where it goes with working paper? Because I remember last year that we have to put that in research activity.
That is correct. And Melro, what I've done, so I have a couple working papers, or what I would call manuscripts in process at various stages. I list those under research activities and don't really use the working paper part,
Okay.
which is what I believe we did that year, or excuse me, that year, last year. And so my recommendation is that we keep that same protocol or that same convention so that we're consistent year to year. So if you've got a manuscript in process, maybe you're collecting data, maybe you're doing a literature review, maybe you've got the first draft done. When you go under research activities, and I can do that in a moment, Lisa, if you want me to.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to show that. But yeah, that's, I mean, one of the things, I think the publication data, I always think of this as being a little like further cooked. Like you have a date of submission, you know what the title is going to be, you know what the publication is going to be, versus a project that's kind of in its kind of early stage, like it could go a few different ways. You don't know exactly when you'll submit it. This to me feels like something that's a little bit more cooked than just a big project.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, so then Bob, you'll just at the top, usually people would hit save. I would hit cancel because we know this is just for purposes.
Yeah, I'm going to cancel that one.
And actually, Bob, if you'll just keep your screen up for 1 second, one of the things that I learned this year is if you have a Trinity collaborator, so it looked like your second entry was entered by Jorge.
That is correct. That is correct.
So if you need to make an edit to that, you actually need to talk to Jorge about it. So somebody contacted me and said, there's an error, can you change it? And as the site administrator, I can't change that. You have to go directly to Jorge. So if your co-author beat you to the punch and they misspelled something, go to your co-author. So if you have a question, go to Jorge about this one.
Yeah, this says, you'll see at the top what Lisa's talking about, edit. It says you've been indicated as a contributor for this item and do not have access to modify. If you require revisions, please contact the person who. So for my purposes, this is fine. The title might change, the journal to which it will be submitted may not, but we've got an approximate date. We're working on the final draft at the moment. So, and actually should be two co-authors. I don't see it here,
Okay.
But anyway.
That's a perfect example. Yep. And I just noticed, so Bob, the example you showed us had a expected submission date. So if as that publication goes through its life cycle, you can also, in this case, you could ask Jorge to go back into the system and update the dates. So for example, if, so Bob, if you'll just hit that first one, the Mexico, perfect. So this one was already published, but if you had like a submission date and you could go back into the system, say 6 months later, move it to accepted, move it to published, and you don't have to keep entering the rest of the information. You can just update the dates. Digital Measures is smart enough to know whatever the most recent date is its most kind of sophisticated. It's in the end of its life cycle. That's very helpful.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's perfect. I was going to say if you want to stop sharing your screen, I'll run back to the training. But in a sense, and I think many people got a feel for this last year, this is largely the kind of work that lays ahead of you in the first step of using digital measures is going through and making sure that all of your activities are represented in the database completely and accurately. So every time you have a form of service, a publication, a presentation, you're going to go through that process that Bob was really just generous enough to kind of walk you through. and to make sure whatever information you have ends up in the system. And I just want to sort of tell you right off the bat, if you get to a field and it just doesn't apply, just skip it. So maybe you're publishing with a journal that has a volume number, but not an issue number. There's no obligation to put something under issue. Just know that you sort of add what's relevant to you and what's relevant to the record you're working with. So in addition to kind of bringing over the information that's new, I also always like to caution all faculty to double check that any information that's been uploaded on your behalf is accurate. So the place that I would look is I would look at that scheduled teaching screen. So for example, if you had a class or you had an independent study student and it's not showing up, send me an email and I'll get it fixed right away. We also added some information for advising. So you should see an advising record for fall 2020. But, you know, take a look and see. So there might be some information under like the screen called degree info, personal contact information. Many of you probably cleaned that up last year, but you can make your record as complete as possible by just verifying that things we've entered on your behalf are accurate. We've kind of been through the screen of looking at a publication with Bob. But I did want to say that you notice that throughout the screen, sometimes you'll come across an AACSB question. And for all of you, it's really important that you fill those in, because that's what will prompt the system to kind of tag the record for your accreditation reports. I'm going to show you a definition of what both of those are in just a second. Let's just jump there right now. So for example, the questions that they're probably going to ask you is they ask you if it was peer reviewed or refereed, if it was editorially reviewed, and then the AACSB classification, which is a really specific definition. And I'll remind you what that definition is. So when we say that something is peer reviewed for AACSB purposes, I think this is still the definition. It means that it's been blind reviewed by external reviewers. You will also see the option of something called editorially reviewed. And my understanding from my conversations with Bob and Deli is that this is a pretty rare instance, and it means that it only gets reviewed by an editorial office instead of peer reviewed. The other thing you'll see is a question that says, is this document publicly available? And for AACSB purposes, if it's listed in a library, you can say yes. The only times you might say no is, let's say you were doing some professional consulting for a private company and you wrote kind of a report for them to be considered an internal document. That's something that would be considered no, because it's not kind of part of the world of scholarship that's accessible in libraries. But almost anything that you do, like a traditional publication, the answer is going to be yes.
Lisa, on that,
Yeah.
This is Kim.
Yeah, thanks, Kim.
Is this publicly available? And it says any published research. If I've done a consulting project and written a research report for the client, that's technically not published.
Right.
Okay, so I would just say I wouldn't put it in there then.
I think you would put no, right? Because the example you're using, Kim, that seems largely like a kind of interaction between you and like a private client.
Right.
Right. And even if that was like a public organization, unless it's like a government document, right, that's getting kind of filed in the record, that's just a different form of scholarship, right? It's not better or worse. It's just different. It's not something that you could find in WorldCat or at the Trinity Library.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. That's a great example. And I want to say, and the reason I wanted to share all of these slides with you and kind of give them to you as a reference that you can keep going back to. So in digital measures, you should use the Aacsb classifications for the 3 different kinds of scholarship: basic or discovery scholarship, applied or integration application scholarship, or teaching and learning scholarship, SOTL. And I would say that I am not the best person to help you figure out what category your publication belongs in. I can just help you find the screen. But if you have a question, I would encourage you to talk to your chair first, or to talk to Bob or Deli about sort of what category it's in, because you'll want to use a consistent definition as a school. So I've given you some time today to kind of play as we go, but I'll pause again here and just sort of have everybody look into their preloaded data on the teaching screen. So if there's anything, if you're having a question or there's something else you want to talk about, I'd be happy to sort of just pause here and answer that question.
Lisa, there's something under teaching qualifications.
Mm-hmm.
Mine's blank. Is that where you put PhD or what?
So let me take a look at that screen. So I don't think that's uncommon, Kim. So I want to say that, like, this might be something that is kind of a school of business question. So for example, it could also be an accreditation question, but it's not something we've put a lot of time and energy into. But for example, when we get accredited, we have to demonstrate why somebody is qualified to teach the classes they teach. And in many cases, it's pretty straightforward. So there's usually something like degree and discipline. But every now and again, you get a little bit of a curveball. So some of you know our colleague, Mark Lewis in the computer science department. Mark is a great example of a curveball because I think Mark actually has a PhD in physics, but he teaches computer science because, so we usually have to go through and say, actually, in this case, that training is perfectly relevant. But the other thing you might not know about Mark teaches a physical education class called roller skating 1 and roller skating 2. And we had to go through, and Mark has a different set of qualifications why he's qualified to teach roller skating than why he's qualified to teach upper division computer science. So the fact that you don't see anything in that screen, I wouldn't freak out about it, but it's not a question we're asking an instructor to make. It's a kind of institutional question about proving that the people we have teaching our classes are in fact qualified to do so, whether they are computer science, physics, or roller skating. So sometimes, like, the qualification can change by the course. So just know that that's something that it's blank because it's something that the institution would do, and it's only for accreditation purposes. It's not something we think about typically. Some of you might be in the same boat, right? So I'm imagining there's people in finance and decision sciences. You might have degrees in business. You might have degrees in economics or statistics. That's a perfect example. Sometimes they like to see when the degree you have doesn't perfectly match the prefix of the courses you teach. That's a good question, but that's one I'd say you can ignore it for this round.
Good, thank you.
So the next thing I want to show you is, for those of you who are coming back for year 2 in digital measures, we made 2 changes this year based on feedback from faculty users in year 1. And so far, the folks I've showed this to are very enthusiastic and happy about it. So if you go to the top of your digital measures screen, you'll see an item called reports. And last year, we used a report that was called eSPA. And this year, we are now changing the report to something called Annual Activity Report. And for those of you that are in the screen, go ahead and click that link and you can run your annual activity report, and you might notice a few differences right off the bat. The first is that we found the format of this report to be cleaner. People liked how it's organized. And second, people also liked that it's comprehensive. So anything you add in digital measures shows up on this report. So all of those things we just looked at, like the one Mauro was asking about, research activities, publications, it's just a little bit more of a user-friendly report. It's not as kind of idiosyncratic, but I just wanted to be clear about that because it is very different. So you can now ignore that report that's called eSPA. I'm happy to run a report for somebody, but I'm guessing you're going to see that your stuff is listed there. It almost looks halfway between like a SPA and a CV. So you'll have like all your publications for the year. You'll have a list of all the classes you taught, any service entries that you entered, everything should be there. And you'll find that it's just like a lot kind of cleaner and easier to use. It's all the data's there. It's just in a kind of cleaner way. So now I'm going to kind of, I think I did that wrong. It's the 20th. I'm going to shift gears a little bit, and I'm going to talk about the kind of second part, which is workflow, which is where you'll put your information about your SPA. But before we kind of go on to this piece, did anybody have a digital measures question that's kind of burning?
Lisa?
Yep.
This is Amy. I had a question about independent study.
Great.
So when you have an independent study, it's not listed as a course, a scheduled teaching?
So if the student was enrolled in an independent study course, like you might have a program, you might have something in the books, right? That's like accounting 4135 independent study. If for whatever reason you're not seeing that, let me know and I'll get it added. So if the student was part of a course, you were the instructor, you gave them a grade, it should be showing up on scheduled teaching.
Okay, I'll send you a message. Thank you.
Perfect. Every now and again, we come across departments that do that differently. Sometimes we have some weird cases where there's 2 instructors listed for a course. Sometimes we get some glitches with that. So if you're missing something, let me know. There's also an option on the digital measures screen. Maybe it's called like mentoring. That sometimes there's like a way to put research students there if you're just working with students as collaborators, but they're not necessarily enrolled as a course. So there's kind of 2 ways to capture it, but if it's a 4-credit class, like an internship or a research assistantship, it should be coming up on your page. So I'm going to kind of run you through the workflow process. Some of you might have already done this. I actually know that some of you have already submitted your reports for this year. There's 2 ways to get to your evaluation. One is to click on a link that the system automatically generated for you in like the 2nd week of December. So if you saw that and you saved that link, you are welcome to go back and use that again. If you like lost that or you don't want to go back and dig through your email, there's a very easy way to do that. And that's you go to the tab that's labeled More, and under Workflow, you can click that, and that should take you to your annual evaluation for this year. This is super tiny, but I'm just going to sort of walk you through it, and then I think you'll see what I'm talking about. So you know that in most years, right, we would use a summary of professional activities, the SPA form. You see it as like a Word document. This year, what we've done, and if you're on your workflow screen, you should see it really cleanly. We have already updated the format to reflect the revised guidelines for 2020 evaluation. So for example, this year, we're not asking faculty to write the kind of long version of a SPA. We're encouraging them to do an abbreviated 2-page summary. We're asking them to write a short statement about how their professional activities were impacted by the pandemic, right? This is their COVID statement. And then also you have the ability to kind of write a letter on your own behalf to be considered for a Best of the Best award. So now you can do all of that right here in workflow. You don't have to email these materials to your chair. Everything gets sort of gets put here. And you'll notice at the very top of the form that that annual activity report that I just showed you is automatically getting attached to your evaluation materials. So anything that you've already added into digital measures is already part of your materials. And I've talked to a few faculty in different parts of the university this year. So some of them actually feel like the annual activity report captures everything they want to say about themselves, and they don't feel like they need to have a lot of detail in a SPA document. If that's the case, you don't really have to put very much extra into a SPA document. We just want you to know that the option is there for you to do so. So if you feel like the annual activity report lists everything that you did and you're good with that, that's fine. If you felt like you wanted to add a little bit more detail about why a publication was particularly impressive, or something that was really interesting and unusual about a course, the option is there for you to do that. Another change that we made, and we made this based on faculty feedback, is that last year you had the option of like writing your answers in a text box. And faculty told us that they liked writing in Microsoft Word and uploading a document. They felt like that they had a little bit more control and they liked being able to format things. So now instead of putting things in a text box, you just upload a document instead. It's a really small change, but we really wanted to be responsive to what faculty said was important to them. So this is the material that's due on January 20th. So this is the stuff that's due in about a week. And my hunch is that to do this well, you're going to have to spend a little bit of time in digital measures and making sure that all of your records are up to date. And then you can kind of come over to this screen and submit everything else. Once you submit it, it automatically goes to your chair for review. So department chairs that are in the training today, you might already see some entries in your workflow tab because colleagues that just sort of got it done over the break.
Lisa, I have a question.
Yeah, sure, John, go ahead.
I don't see most of the things that you're referring to. In fact, your top ribbon, I don't even have all those tabs. Is this treated differently if you are a contingent faculty member? Would we not have that information?
That's exactly right. So, and John, I saw your message. I want to go back and double check everything. Since you were a new user this year, I just want to make sure that everything got uploaded. But this is only for full-time faculty who would normally do a SPA. And I might talk to you offline because I think actually you might be in that category, but I want to make sure that I get it right.
John, I'm also having the same issue, and I had actually reached out to Jorge asking if we had fallen under a different category.
Yep.
He said he didn't believe so, so I'm not.
Okay. I'm going to double check, and I have to apologize. There's like, I had to create new accounts, but I'm going to look at both of your accounts today and make sure that everything is clean and that all the data entry happened in the right way, because the fact that things are missing is not good. But that's why we do this training, and that's why we always have people double check that
Thank you.
everything.
Lisa, John and Teresa are visiting assistant professors
Yep.
of finance and decision sciences, as is Wenjing Yao. I
Okay.
believe Wenjing's information flowed over.
Okay. Great.
But they would fall into the same
Great.
category as her. And I would
Perfect.
just ask John and Teresa, if you would please, and Wenjing, if you would please enter all the publication stuff for the last 5 years for our accreditation purposes. And I know y'all have things that might be presentations or manuscripts that were published in journals or proceedings or whatever. So if you would add that this year, then that will be in there for us for our, because we're right in the getting ready for the self-study year for reaccreditation. So.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, so that's a great, thank you for saying that. And I'll take a look right after, and I'll look at all 3 of your accounts right after our session today. There's a couple of things I really like to just emphasize for digital measures users. For one is that we have already changed the format of the evaluation to match the memo that Dr. Jones shared with the campus about evaluation. So things are going to look probably different for 2020 than they've looked in the past, and that they'll probably look in the future. The second thing I really like to emphasize is that the evaluation process and the criteria is exactly the same, whether you're in digital measures or not. It's just that the process is facilitated through the system. So I actually find it a lot more efficient because you don't have to kind of email dozens and dozens of documents to your chair. You don't need to attach all your course evaluations and send to your chair. Everything is sort of just put into the system here. And that as chairs write up their evaluation for you for the year, all of that just gets put into workflow. So I think it's just a little bit less cumbersome and streamlined, but we've only replicated a process that we used to handle through email and other ways.
Lisa, if we enter under activities something, does
Yes.
it automatically go to workflow?
Yes, so anything you add in digital measures ends up in that annual activity report, provided that you tag it as a 2020 activity. So anything you add, Kim, service, consulting, awards, publications, presentations, mentoring, anything you add will end up on that report, provided that it's tagged as 2020, because that's like the field that the database uses to pull the report.
Lisa, just one observation in response to Kim's question, and that is anything where it requires an opening date or a start date and a completion date. If you don't have a completion date, it will carry over year to year to year. So if you said I have let's say a research project, call it a working paper, or you've submitted a manuscript in 2019 and it was published in 2019, but you didn't go back and put that it was closed out, it's going to show up on this year's report. So you've got to, everyone has to enter the, I don't know what you want to call it, the final date, the closure date, and it's labeled differently for different kinds of items, but for publications, for example, or research projects, or consulting engagements, or teaching innovations, like put together a proposal for the marketing major, if you don't put a date that it in there that it was approved in one of those boxes or finished, it's going to carry over year to year to year. So it's just something to think about.
And my hunch would be is if you run that annual activity report or you click that PDF icon, you can see what's there. So if it looks funky, like you've rolled off a board, you're no longer serving on a committee, you can go back and double check, and you can just make that update. But as long as there's a date, it'll be in your report.
And Bob, you want us for the start date to go back 5 years?
Only for publications, only for publications. So, and that's because, as Kim, as you know, we follow the 5-year cycle for the formerly standard 15, but now standard 3, I believe. Olga could check me on that. But yeah, just 5 years on publications. Everything else is not necessary.
Great. And then, so Bob, if you're saying 5 years, so is it 2015?
Yes, I would go 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20.
Okay.
Exactly. And once that's in, then all you need to do, as Lisa said, it's a permanent repository. Just keep adding each new year. But for folks, this is their first year, we really need to get all that data in there.
Great. So, we're kind of coming to the end of the training, and I'm going to stick around at the end and answer questions if there's something you want me to look at or a question you didn't want to ask in front of the group. But I just wanted to remind you of the timeline that we're working with, so that faculty should have their materials submitted by January 20th. And if you don't do it on the 20th, the system is going to start sending you a bunch of harassing emails. So it won't be easy to hide. Your chairs have until March 2nd to upload their summary letter to the workflow screen. And then Bob gets them on, Bob, I think you have a week basically to turn those around, right? So you submit them to Dr. Jones on the 9th. And then the way the system works is it kind of automatically routes it to the next person in the chain. And that once your chair finishes it, it goes to your dean. And once your dean finishes it, it goes to the vice president for academic affairs. And all of that happens automatically.
And I'm processing those as I get them. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
I did want to sort of tell you a little bit about where you can get some help. So I am going to I'm going to share the link to today's training, the video. I'll send it to Olga. I'll send you the slides. I also want to say that we have a little bit of other ways you can get help if you want it. So we are now up to, what's the date? So we're going to do another training. It's not business specific, it's for all departments, but if you want to listen again, you're welcome to join us on Thursday morning at 9 a.m. We're going to do training. And next week, we don't have any more trainings, but we do have drop-in help. So Jess and I will both be on Zoom, and we can work with you one-on-one on questions, including one that we have right before the deadline. I have no idea how crowded those sessions will be. So just sort of know that going in. You can also send us an email if you have it. The other thing is, if you're on the slides, whether you access it now or later, I actually found that Texas State, which is another institution that uses digital measures, has a really good website that has like step-by-step instructions, like how do I enter a publication? How do I enter a service record? Keep in mind, it's a different institution, but I didn't see the need to kind of redo their manual. But I find their stuff to be incredibly helpful. And even though it's from a different institution, I think it's really helpful. Again, this is kind of the second year of a pilot, and we want your feedback. We made some changes that faculty seem to really like. And as you're working in different screens, if you realize there should be more items on a drop-down menu, or you're wondering why something is the way it is, or could it be different, let us know. And if we're able to make changes, we will be happy to do them. So as really just kind of a final thought for today, I just want to remind you of kind of the two things that you need to do in the next 8 days or so. The first is to go into digital measures and make sure all of your information is uploaded. Make sure it's accurate and complete. And then go through that kind of separate process for workflow, upload your attachments, and hit submit by January 20th. I think hopefully you've been able to get some, make some progress during our meeting today, but do know that we're here to help you every step of the way, so that you can get everything in by the 20th, the deadline. So I'm gonna stop there and say, if you've got what you needed, feel free to log off. If I'm gonna stop recording also, let's do that.